like,
so tonight,
us all the jokes.
what's up then to you? So tonight I would like to share with you what the Torah tells us about relationships, and specifically intimacy with a spouse. So the Torah, which is, we look at the Torah as something archaic, is actually so fresh, so brilliant, and so valuable for us in 2016 and also going into the new year 2017. But first, I'm going to preface and just tell you that in general, many religions look at intimacy as something very negative and very not holy. And they say in order to be intimate, you need to disengage from holiness. So a young monk arrives in the monastery, and he is assigned the position of kind of copying over the canons and laws of the church by hand. And he's, taking this job seriously. He's just entering the monastery, and he's writing. He realizes something off about this. He goes to see the head. He goes to see the head monk, and he tells him, something doesn't make sense. I'm sitting here copying over these laws, but we're copying it from a copy that someone else copied from a different copy. And why aren't we copying it from the originals? So the head monk thinks about this, and he says, listen, we have been doing this for years, and it's worked, but you make a very valuable point. Let me go and check in our archives to see, to compare the two notes. So he goes down into the deep, dark dungeon basement of the church, the monastery, and he's there for quite a while. So the young monk is like, I should probably go check on the head monk and see what's going on, because it's been a little bit of time since I left him. So he goes down into the basement, and he suddenly hears this wailing and these cries coming from the dungeons, the basement, and he's crying, and the monk is crying, and he's saying, we missed the letter, and he's banging his head on the wall, and he's wailing, and the young monk comes down, and he says, is everything okay? And he sees the monk has bloodied foreheads, and he's bruised all over, and he's crying, we missed the letter, and he says, what's wrong, Father? What do you mean you missed the letter? And he says, the word is celebrate. To be Jewish is a way of life. We are told that the holiest place was where, in the Bet HaMikdash, was where the Kruvim, they were a male and female-like figure, and they would turn toward one another when the Jews were going through good times, when marriages were happy. And it's actually told that when there was a divorce, they would turn away from one another. That's how deeply affected a divorce is, according to the Torah. And when the Jews were going into Jerusalem, which was such a happy occasion, such a happy time, the male and the female figures were intertwined with one another. They were hugging one another. And when the Romans saw this, they laughed and scoffed and said, what is going on? This is your religion? Intimacy and the male and the female, that's your religion? And the Romans have a whole different way of looking at intimacy. And a lot of the world, different religions have a very different and often negative way of looking at intimacy in a relationship. But in Judaism, we actually celebrate intimacy. We celebrate it because it's actually holiness. Intimacy is holy. So the Hebrew word, we have some Israelis in the house. So the Hebrew word for man is ish, aleph, yud, shin. And the Hebrew word for woman is isha, aleph, shin, hey, which both the ish and isha actually share two of the same letters, which is the aleph and the shin, which make esh, which actually means fire. So when they have the yud and the hey, which makes the word ish and isha, which is actually the yud and hey, are from the name of God. When we bring God down into this relationship and we bring him into our marriage, then we're not left with just fire. We actually bring the holiness into our relationship. Then we're going to have a peaceful relationship, a relationship, an intimacy that is holy, an intimacy that is healthy and strong. When we don't have God in this relationship, there's lots of sparks, there's fireworks, and not necessarily the good type. There's a lot of fire. So, if intimacy is so holy and so relevant and so necessary for a relationship, why is it that we have so many rules that control this dynamic of the couple? And so I'm going to just start by telling you that there's one organ that a male has that if you starve him, you satiate him, and if you feed him, you starve him. Which doesn't really make sense, because everything in the world, when you feed it, you're automatically satiating it. So what does this mean to a relationship? So, for example, anything that requires, a lot of different things to happen, for example, flying or driving a car, in order for it to work effectively, there are lots and lots and lots of rules. And not just rules, there are books, there are lessons you have to go to, there are required testings. There are so many things that have to happen before you are actually the driver of a car, like just a simple car. And yet there's huge rules that go together. In order for you to drive that car, there are rules that have to be in place in order for it to work and for it to be effective, because it's so powerful and so strong and does such incredible things. Airplanes, they go from different places, they fly huge, long distances. They need rules. And how much more so that a couple in a relationship, in intimacy, it's so powerful. It's so powerful what they could have and what they do have. And intimacy is a laser beam. If it's not controlled, it is everywhere. It's exploding. But when it's controlled and it's focused in with the rules of what the Torah actually guides us, then automatically the relationship is powerful. There's power attached to it. There's strength. It's like holding something in your hand that's tremendous and powerful, like a nuclear bomb, something that can be detrimental. That is what it's like. Intimacy is something that, in the wrong hands could do terrible things, or in the wrong situation, the wrong times. But when it's used in the right way, it could be the most powerful and amazing thing for a couple in a relationship. So if you let your intimacy do everything, when you want, how you want, and with who you want, then you will never satiate yourselves. You'll always be hungry. So, having said all that, intimacy has some rules. In order to appreciate the strength of a relationship, these are some of the rules that we'll highlight today. So, unrestrained, it will make you starve. So, it has to be in a marriage, and it has to be with one person. Intimacy has to be when you love one another. So when you're fighting or in a very heavy disagreement, not something small, but something that's really powerful, it's appropriate that before you're intimate with one another, that you come to a good understanding in a good relationship. It should be preceded by moments of tenderness, of love, of respect, and care. Because intimacy, when it's used properly, it's not just a physical experience, it actually connects a couple with one another. That is also why intimacy is discouraged when one spouse is drunk or sleeping